If you gaze long enough into an abyss, the abyss will gaze back into you. This striking quote by Friedrich Nietzsche captures something profoundly unsettling about the human experience. It conjures images of staring into the deep unknown, dark, ominous, and bottomless, and sensing a force staring back, reflecting our gaze. But what does Nietzsche really mean? How does this philosophical insight apply to our everyday lives? More importantly, what can it teach us about navigating the darker aspects of our own nature and the challenges of society at large? To begin understanding this concept, consider the abyss as a symbol. It represents the darkness we confront both within ourselves and in the world around us, whether it's moral corruption, personal failure, trauma, injustice, or even a daunting task that seems impossible to overcome. Nietzsche's warning is clear. When we engage too deeply with this darkness, we risk becoming consumed or transformed by it. In modern life, the abyss takes many forms. For some, it might be battling depression, addiction, or self-doubt. For others, it could be confronting a corrupt system, fighting injustice, or challenging deeply entrenched beliefs. Whatever the case, the abyss demands our attention, testing our resolve and courage. But as Nietzsche suggests, this engagement is not without consequence. The more we immerse ourselves in the abyss, the more we risk it changing us. We might start out as idealistic crusaders, but end up bitter, jaded, or morally compromised. This transformation can be slow and insidious, with each step seemingly justified, until we look back and see how far we've fallen. Take the example of individuals who dedicate their lives to fighting injustice. Many begin their journey with noble intentions, seeking to right wrongs and bring light to darkness. Yet, over time, as they confront corruption, greed, or apathy, some become hardened. They may adopt the very tactics they once condemned, justifying their behavior as necessary to achieve their goals. In their relentless gaze into the abyss, they become reflections of what they once fought against. This is precisely Nietzsche's point. We must be vigilant when engaging with darkness, lest it consumes our spirit. On a more personal level, the abyss could be our own internal struggles. Consider someone grappling with deep-seated insecurities or fears. In seeking to confront these fears, they may become obsessed, allowing negative thoughts to dominate their mind. This fixation can create a self-fulfilling cycle, where the person's identity becomes defined by their struggles. The abyss, once something external to be faced, becomes internalized, reshaping who they are. I've often reflected on how this concept applies to broader societal issues. Our world today is no stranger to darkness, polarization, violence, social media toxicity, and more. Many of us feel compelled to engage, to fix what we see as broken. But how do we avoid becoming trapped? How do we prevent ourselves from embodying the very problems we set out to challenge? The answer, I believe, lies in self-awareness, boundaries, and resilience. Nietzsche's quote is a cautionary tale, urging us to remain vigilant and grounded when facing darkness. A practical example is the digital abyss of online discourse. Social media platforms often amplify negativity, creating echo chambers and toxic exchanges. Engaging with these platforms can lead us to lose sight of who we are, transforming thoughtful discourse into divisive rhetoric. In many ways, staring too long at the abyss of digital conflict can make us mirror the hostility and aggression we initially sought to counter. But there is hope. Nietzsche's warning isn't about avoiding the abyss entirely. It's about how we engage with it. To face darkness and retain our integrity, we must cultivate a strong sense of self. This means understanding our limits, being mindful of our motivations, and knowing when to step back. It also means grounding ourselves in values that transcend immediate challenges. Courage, compassion, and self-reflection can act as anchors, preventing us from being swept away by the abyss's currents. As we continue this journey into Nietzsche's thought, remember that engaging with darkness is a test of strength and character. The abyss is unavoidable, but we have the power to choose how it shapes us. If we can face it with clarity, courage, and humility, we may emerge stronger, transformed, yes, but not consumed. This delicate dance between confronting darkness and retaining our humanity lies at the heart of Nietzsche's philosophy, and it is a lesson that resonates deeply with every challenge we face in life. Friedrich Wilhelm Nietzsche was born on October 15, 1844, in the small town of Rocken, Prussia, now part of Germany. His upbringing was marked by tragedy early on. When Nietzsche was only 4 years old, his father, a Lutheran pastor, passed away from a brain ailment. This loss had a profound impact on young Nietzsche and shaped his early worldview, particularly regarding suffering and human frailty. He, his mother, and his sister moved to Naumburg, where Nietzsche's formative years were spent in a strict and pious household, largely overseen by women in the family. Despite these constraints, Nietzsche excelled academically, showing signs of his intellectual brilliance early. Nietzsche's academic journey began with a strong interest in theology and classical philology, the study of ancient languages, literature, and civilizations. He enrolled at the prestigious Schulpforta boarding school, where his linguistic and analytical abilities flourished. This education laid the groundwork for his later works, instilling a deep appreciation for Greek and Roman thought, myth, and culture. In 1864, Nietzsche began his university studies at the University of Bonn, initially pursuing theology but quickly switching to classical philology under the influence of renowned scholar Friedrich Wilhelm Ritschl. Nietzsche later followed Ritschl to the University of Leipzig, where he distinguished himself as a prodigy. It was during this period that Nietzsche first encountered the work of philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer, whose pessimistic outlook and ideas on the will deeply resonated with him. Schopenhauer's emphasis on the relentless striving of the human will and the inevitability of suffering captivated Nietzsche and provided the initial philosophical framework for his later work. In 1869, at the remarkably young age of 24, Nietzsche was appointed to a professorship in philology at the University of Basel in Switzerland. This was an exceptional achievement, marking him as a rising star in his field. However, Nietzsche's time at Basel was marked by a shift from philology to philosophy. His friendship with composer Richard Wagner played a significant role in this transformation. Wagner, who was much older, became a father figure and mentor. Their shared love of art, myth, and culture drew them together, and Nietzsche initially saw Wagner's music as the embodiment of a new cultural renaissance. Nietzsche's first major work, The Birth of Tragedy, 1872, reflected his early philosophical ideas and admiration for Greek tragedy. He argued that life's inherent chaos and suffering could be affirmed through art and the Dionysian spirit, which embraced life's irrationality and passion. This work, however, was poorly received by the academic community, who criticized it for deviating from philological norms. Despite the backlash, it marked the beginning of Nietzsche's philosophical journey. By the mid-1870s, Nietzsche grew disillusioned with Wagner, whose nationalistic and anti-Semitic tendencies clashed with Nietzsche's growing individualism and cosmopolitan values. This falling out with Wagner symbolized a broader rejection of traditional German culture and collective identity. Nietzsche's next works, including Human, All Too Human, ****, 1878, reflected his turn toward a more critical, rational, and scientific examination of human beliefs and values. He adopted a more aphoristic writing style, filled with biting wit and skepticism, that characterized much of his later work. Around this time, Nietzsche's health deteriorated. He suffered from chronic migraines, visual impairments, and debilitating physical pain, forcing him to resign from his professorship in 1879. The next decade of Nietzsche's life was marked by isolation, financial struggles, and a relentless drive to produce philosophical works despite his suffering. He became a wandering philosopher, moving across Switzerland, Italy, and France, living in modest accommodations while dedicating himself fully to writing. This period saw the emergence of Nietzsche's most influential works. Thus Spoke Zarathustra, 1883 to 1885, introduced the idea of the Übermensch, Overman, and proclaimed the death of God, symbolizing the collapse of traditional values and the need for new ones. Nietzsche called for individuals to overcome themselves, reject imposed moralities, and create their own path to meaning and greatness. Beyond Good and Evil, 1886, and On the Genealogy of Morals, 1887, further expanded on his critique of traditional morality, exploring the roots of human values, the concept of the will to power, and the psychological mechanisms underlying morality and culture. Nietzsche's philosophy was radical and provocative, challenging established norms, religious dogmas, and social conventions. He argued that good and evil were constructs created by the powerful to maintain control, while true freedom and authenticity could only be achieved by those who transcended these artificial divisions. His work was ahead of its time and largely misunderstood during his life, contributing to his isolation. Tragically, in 1889, Nietzsche suffered a mental breakdown. He was found wandering the streets of Turin, Italy, embracing a horse that was being beaten, a poignant reflection of his empathy and descent into madness. He spent the remaining years of his life in the care of his family, unable to write or communicate coherently. Nietzsche passed away in 1900 at the age of 55. While Nietzsche's life was marked by pain, isolation, and misunderstanding, his philosophical legacy endures. His works have influenced countless thinkers, artists, and movements, challenging humanity to confront its values, embrace life's complexities, and strive towards self-overcoming. Nietzsche remains a figure who gazed into the abyss of human existence and dared others to do the same, with courage and conviction. At the heart of Friedrich Nietzsche's critique of morality lies the distinction between what he termed master morality and slave morality. This framework, outlined in works like Beyond Good and Evil and On the Genealogy of Morals, serves as a powerful lens through which he explored the origins of human values, social structures, and power dynamics. To understand Nietzsche's conception of morality, we must first examine how he saw human behavior, power, and moral systems shaping society. In doing so, we'll also explore the relevance of these ideas in the modern world, where echoes of master-slave morality continue to manifest. Master morality, according to Nietzsche, arises from the values of the dominant, powerful, and self-assured class. Masters, in Nietzsche's terms, do not derive their sense of good from an external source or impose their beliefs on others through guilt. Instead, their moral framework is one of self-affirmation, grounded in personal strength, nobility, power, and assertiveness. For the masters, what is good is synonymous with what affirms life, vitality, and the pursuit of greatness. Conversely, anything bad is merely a sign of weakness, passivity, or inferiority. For example, Nietzsche admired the ethos of the ancient Greek aristocracy, who celebrated courage, excellence, arete, and self-reliance. This class of people defined their values based on their own strength and achievements. In a practical sense, good could refer to bravery on the battlefield, intellectual superiority, or self-mastery. Masters did not seek validation or moral approval from others. Their values emerged organically from their way of life and their need to assert their will to power. In contrast, slave morality is born from the resentment or ressentiment of the oppressed, subjugated, or those unable to express power in the same way. For Nietzsche, this morality is reactive. It is not a celebration of strength or self-affirmation, but rather a rejection of the qualities and values that masters hold dear. It frames good as humility, empathy, kindness, and self-sacrifice, traits that align with weakness or submission. The evil is defined as the qualities of the master: strength, pride, power, and domination. Slave morality is cunning in its moral framework, because the oppressed cannot confront the masters directly or overthrow their power. They resort to moral subversion. They redefine values in a way that elevates their own weaknesses and frames the strong as evil and oppressive. This inversion of values is both a means of coping with oppression and a form of psychological power. By elevating meekness and humility as the ultimate virtues, slave morality subtly exerts control over the strong through guilt, shame, and the weaponization of moral codes. Nietzsche's critique of morality challenges us to think deeply about the origins of our values and the motivations behind them. It suggests that much of what society upholds as moral may be rooted in the power dynamics of centuries past. In this context, Nietzsche's morality is not about a simple dichotomy of right and wrong, but about the complex interplay of power, identity, and human drives. Reflecting on modern society, I see countless examples where master-slave morality plays out. In politics, social movements, corporate culture, and even interpersonal relationships, Nietzsche's framework provides insight into why certain values emerge and how they shape our behaviors and beliefs. While some people or groups define their morality based on principles of strength, ambition, or self-fulfillment, master morality, others challenge or resist these values through calls for equity, empathy, and collective justice, slave morality. In today's political climate, competing moralities often reflect Nietzsche's concepts. Consider the rhetoric of power and dominance espoused by some political leaders. They may prioritize national pride, self-reliance, and a winner-takes-all mentality, aligning with master morality. On the other hand, social justice movements frequently emphasize empathy, inclusion, and equality, mirroring elements of slave morality as they resist perceived power imbalances and systemic oppression. Social media platforms have become arenas for moral battles, with individuals often engaging in moral signaling, call-outs, and shaming. Here, we see a complex interplay of master and slave morality. Influential personalities may project strength and dominance, creating new values or asserting their perspectives forcefully. In contrast, many grassroots movements emerge in reaction, exposing abuses of power and advocating for marginalized voices. Within corporate environments, some leaders embody a form of master morality by pursuing innovation, assertiveness, and aggressive market strategies. However, backlash often arises in the form of calls for ethical practices, work-life balance, and empathy-driven leadership, elements more aligned with slave morality. This push-pull dynamic illustrates Nietzsche's contention that value systems are inherently tied to power structures. The French Revolution ***. Nietzsche viewed historical upheavals, such as the French Revolution, as moments where slave morality asserted itself over entrenched power. The nobility, masters, embodied a system built on power, privilege, and hereditary dominance. The revolutionaries, driven by ideas of equality, fraternity, and justice, sought to dismantle this power structure. While the revolution led to profound changes, Nietzsche might argue that it simultaneously imposed a new moral order grounded in ressentiment. Consider cultural shifts over time, such as the civil rights movement or feminist movements. These movements often challenge entrenched norms that favor certain forms of dominance, demanding justice, empathy, and recognition for marginalized groups. Nietzsche's framework would view these challenges as expressions of a morality rooted in resisting domination, often reframing values to favor those historically suppressed. Understanding Nietzsche's concept of master-slave morality raises important questions about how we define morality today. Are our values genuinely self-chosen, or are they imposed by the power dynamics that shape society? Nietzsche's critique calls us to reflect on whether our actions stem from strength and authentic self-affirmation, or from reactive opposition and ressentiment. For individuals, this means questioning why we hold the values we do. Are we guided by genuine principles that empower us to create and excel? Or do we seek to undermine others out of resentment? Nietzsche's challenge is deeply personal: to transcend slave morality and become self-creating, to embody strength without oppressing others, and to engage with moral complexities without succumbing to bitterness or conformity. While Nietzsche often championed the qualities of master morality, he did not advocate for unchecked dominance or cruelty. Rather, he believed in transcending simplistic moral binaries and creating a more authentic, life-affirming approach. This means embracing strength and self-mastery while cultivating compassion, wisdom, and integrity. It is possible to face power without succumbing to ressentiment and to assert oneself without imposing on others. In sum, Nietzsche's master-slave morality invites us to examine the roots of our values, recognize the power dynamics at play, and transcend imposed moralities. It is a call to create, to strive, and to rise above the binaries that often divide us. By understanding this framework, we can navigate the complexities of modern society with greater clarity, authenticity, and self-awareness. This, in Nietzsche's view, is the path to truly living beyond good and evil, becoming the creators of our own destiny. Friedrich Nietzsche's philosophical work, Beyond Good and Evil, is perhaps one of his most radical challenges to conventional morality. In it, Nietzsche critiques the simplistic dichotomy of good versus evil, which he sees as an artificial construct designed to control human behavior. He argues that these moral categories do not reflect any objective or universal truths, but are instead tools used by different groups, often to assert dominance, suppress dissent, or justify their existence. For Nietzsche, true moral autonomy and greatness can only be achieved by transcending these limited categories and creating one's own values, a provocative idea that still resonates with contemporary ethical debates. To understand Nietzsche's rejection of binary morality, it is essential to consider the historical and philosophical context in which he wrote. Much of Western morality, in Nietzsche's view, had been shaped by the dual influences of Christianity and Enlightenment rationality. Christianity, with its focus on sin, virtue, and salvation, framed human behavior in moral binaries, often painting strength, pride, and ambition as sinful while extolling meekness, humility, and submission as virtuous. The Enlightenment, meanwhile, sought universal truths through reason and science, often codifying morality in rigid, rationalistic terms. Nietzsche saw this moral framework as inherently limiting. He believed that traditional morality stifled human creativity, ambition, and vitality, turning people away from their authentic desires and instincts. The result, according to Nietzsche, was a kind of spiritual stagnation, a culture of conformity that rewarded mediocrity and punished greatness. In Beyond Good and Evil, Nietzsche advocates for a new moral approach that goes beyond simplistic categories. For him, morality should not be dictated by religious or societal norms, but created by the individual, rooted in their unique perspective, desires, and will to power, a concept referring to the drive for self-realization, strength, and excellence. Nietzsche's Übermensch, or Overman, embodies this new moral standard. The Übermensch rejects externally imposed values and forges a personal moral path, transcending societal expectations. To Nietzsche, the distinction between good and evil is arbitrary, reflecting the interests of those in power or those seeking to undermine it. Master morality, rooted in strength and self-affirmation, views good as whatever enhances power and vitality, while bad is simply what reflects weakness. Slave morality, on the other hand, is reactive, defining good as humility, empathy, and self-sacrifice while condemning the strength of the masters as evil. Both forms of morality, Nietzsche argues, are limited because they arise from the power dynamics of domination and resentment. The challenge for the individual is to move beyond these restrictive categories and create values based on their own experiences, will, and vision. Nietzsche's rejection of binary morality has profound implications for how we understand ethics and social norms. By challenging the notion of universal moral truths, Nietzsche invites us to question the motives behind the moral systems we inherit. Who benefits from these norms? Whose voices are silenced or marginalized? Are the values we hold truly our own, or have they been imposed on us by external forces seeking to control or conform us? This line of inquiry can feel deeply unsettling. If there are no objective moral truths, how do we avoid descending into moral chaos? Nietzsche's response is both empowering and demanding. We must become creators of our own values. This requires profound self-awareness, courage, and a willingness to challenge societal norms. It also demands accountability, as the rejection of external moral codes does not absolve us of ethical responsibility. On the contrary, it places the burden of moral creation squarely on our shoulders. Consider a contemporary example of Nietzsche's philosophy in action: the rise of movements challenging traditional norms around gender and identity. These movements often seek to deconstruct binary categories, e.g., male/female, masculine/feminine, and create space for a broader, more fluid understanding of identity. In doing so, they reflect Nietzsche's call to go beyond rigid moral categories and create new, authentic values rooted in individual experience. At the same time, Nietzsche's critique warns against replacing one rigid moral system with another. For example, movements that demand ideological purity or enforce rigid rules about acceptable beliefs and behaviors risk becoming dogmatic themselves, mirroring the moral constraints they seek to overthrow. Nietzsche would urge us to remain vigilant against such tendencies, emphasizing the need for self-creation and openness to diverse perspectives. In the realm of politics, Nietzsche's ideas offer a powerful critique of moral absolutism. Leaders and political movements often justify their actions by appealing to moral binaries, framing opponents as evil and themselves as good. This rhetoric can be deeply divisive, stifling genuine debate and reducing complex issues to simplistic moral conflicts. Nietzsche's philosophy challenges us to move beyond such rhetoric and engage with the nuances and complexities of human behavior and motivation. This does not mean abandoning moral principles, but rethinking how we define and apply them. Nietzsche's rejection of binary morality has parallels in other philosophical traditions. Existentialists like Jean-Paul Sartre and Albert Camus similarly emphasize the individual's responsibility to create meaning and values in an indifferent or chaotic world. Sartre's concept of radical freedom echoes Nietzsche's call for self-creation, while Camus' exploration of the absurd reflects the challenge of living authentically in a world that often seems devoid of inherent meaning. One relevant anecdote that illustrates Nietzsche's philosophy comes from his own life. During his years as a wandering philosopher, Nietzsche rejected the norms of academic and societal life, choosing instead to live in solitude and dedicate himself to the creation of new philosophical ideas. His break with former mentor Richard Wagner, who embraced German nationalism and anti-Semitism, reflects Nietzsche's commitment to self-determination and his refusal to be bound by inherited values. By turning away from what he saw as the constraints of traditional morality, Nietzsche embodied the very freedom he advocated. Nietzsche's philosophy is not without its challenges. Critics argue that his rejection of binary morality and emphasis on individual value creation can lead to ethical relativism or nihilism. If all values are subjective and self-created, how do we prevent harmful behaviors or maintain social cohesion? Nietzsche himself grappled with this dilemma, acknowledging the potential dangers of moral freedom without ethical responsibility. One response lies in Nietzsche's concept of the Übermensch, an individual who transcends traditional morality not by rejecting ethical standards altogether, but by embodying a higher form of moral responsibility rooted in strength, creativity, and life affirmation. This requires a deep commitment to personal integrity and a willingness to engage authentically with life's challenges. Nietzsche's rejection of binary morality is a call to awaken from complacency and confront the values that shape our lives. It is a challenge to question inherited norms, resist moral absolutism, and create values that reflect our unique experiences and desires. This path is not easy. It requires courage, self-awareness, and a willingness to embrace uncertainty. But for those who dare to walk it, the rewards are profound. A life of authenticity, strength, and moral creativity that transcends the limitations of good and evil. In a world where moral debates often devolve into simplistic binaries, Nietzsche's philosophy remains a powerful reminder of the complexity and richness of human experience. By moving beyond conventional morality, we can confront the depths of our own nature, engage with the world more authentically, and create a life that reflects our highest potential. In doing so, we fulfill Nietzsche's vision of becoming the creators of our own destiny, masters of ourselves and the values we choose to live by. Friedrich Nietzsche's metaphor of the abyss is one of his most evocative and haunting images. When he writes, "He who fights with monsters should be careful lest he thereby become a monster. And if you gaze long enough into an abyss, the abyss will gaze back into you." He isn't merely crafting poetic language. Instead, Nietzsche is warning us about the dangers of engaging deeply with darkness, Whether it be internal struggles, external challenges, or societal evils, and the risk of being consumed or transformed by what we confront. The abyss represents a void of meaning, a confrontation with chaos, despair, or moral corruption. It is the place where one's beliefs, values, and sense of self are challenged to their core. Engaging with the abyss can lead to profound transformation, but it is also fraught with peril. Nietzsche's metaphor encapsulates the paradox of growth. To overcome obstacles, we must face them head-on, but in doing so, we risk becoming trapped or changed by what we confront. The abyss can be deeply personal. Consider someone facing profound grief after the loss of a loved one. In the throes of grief, the world may feel dark and empty, a void that consumes joy and hope. Navigating this abyss demands resilience, self-compassion, and time. Many who have faced such darkness emerge with a transformed understanding of life, mortality, and love. But the journey is perilous. It is easy to become lost in despair, to let bitterness and isolation take hold. For others, the abyss may take the form of addiction. Battling substance abuse is not just about confronting physical dependence, but also facing the underlying pain, trauma, or emptiness that fuels the addiction. It requires a confrontation with one's darkest impulses and fears. Recovery is possible, but it demands continuous self-reflection, vulnerability, and a willingness to endure discomfort. Those who emerge from the abyss of addiction often describe themselves as fundamentally changed, more self-aware, compassionate, and resilient. Yet, the abyss always lingers, a reminder of how easily one can be pulled back. Societies, too, face their own abysses. History is replete with examples of collective darkness, moments when nations confront moral crises, injustices, or the collapse of established norms. Consider Germany after World War II. The horrors of the Nazi regime left an indelible mark on the German psyche. Post-war Germany had to grapple with collective guilt, moral reckoning, and the challenge of rebuilding a society that had fallen into the abyss of hatred and violence. This confrontation with darkness was painful, but it led to introspection, memorialization, and a commitment to democratic values and human rights. The abyss gazed back, but the nation's response shaped its modern identity. On a more contemporary level, movements such as #MeToo represent a collective reckoning with societal darkness. The movement forced a confrontation with pervasive sexual harassment and abuse, demanding accountability and change. For many, speaking out was a deeply personal act, requiring courage to face past trauma and challenge powerful structures. Engaging with this societal abyss has led to increased awareness and systemic change, though the journey remains ongoing and fraught with challenges. As I reflect on Nietzsche's abyss metaphor, I am reminded of my own moments of darkness, times when I've faced self-doubt, failure, or moral dilemmas that tested my integrity. These experiences often felt overwhelming, as if I were staring into a void that threatened to consume everything familiar and stable. In such moments, it was tempting to retreat, to avoid the discomfort and pretend the abyss wasn't there. But avoidance only allows darkness to fester in the shadows. It is through confrontation, through facing pain, fear, or uncertainty head-on, that transformation becomes possible. Yet, the abyss has a way of staring back. When we engage with darkness, we are changed by it. This transformation can be both liberating and dangerous. Some become consumed by what they seek to oppose. Activists fighting against corruption may become cynical and ruthless themselves, or individuals confronting trauma may lose themselves in self-destructive behaviors. Nietzsche's warning is clear. In confronting darkness, we must guard against becoming like the very forces we oppose. This tension is particularly relevant in today's polarized world. Social media often amplifies outrage and negativity, creating an abyss where genuine engagement and empathy are replaced by hostility and dehumanization. Those who fight against perceived injustice may find themselves adopting the same tactics of shaming, silencing, or dehumanizing that they initially opposed. The abyss stares back, and the line between justice and vengeance becomes blurred. So how do we face the abyss without losing ourselves? Nietzsche's philosophy offers some guidance. First, self-awareness is crucial. We must recognize the darkness within ourselves, the capacity for envy, hatred, fear, or pride, before confronting it in others. Only by acknowledging our own vulnerabilities can we engage with external darkness from a place of authenticity and strength. This is not about self-flagellation, but about honest reflection and humility. Second, we must cultivate resilience and a strong sense of purpose. Facing the abyss is inherently destabilizing. It challenges our beliefs and exposes our weaknesses. A clear sense of who we are and what we stand for can anchor us amidst the chaos. This sense of purpose may come from personal values, relationships, or a commitment to a cause greater than oneself. It provides a moral compass, guiding us through the darkness without succumbing to it. Finally, there is the need for boundaries. Engaging with darkness does not mean allowing it to consume us entirely. We must know when to step back, when to seek support, and when to prioritize self-care. This is not a sign of weakness but of wisdom, recognizing that we cannot fight every battle alone or all at once. By maintaining boundaries, we preserve our strength for the battles that matter most. Nietzsche's abyss is a powerful metaphor for transformation, but it is also a reminder of the dangers inherent in confronting darkness. It challenges us to engage deeply with life's complexities without losing sight of who we are. In a world filled with challenges, injustices, and personal trials, Nietzsche's words remain as relevant as ever. To stare into the abyss is to risk transformation, but it is also an opportunity for growth, strength, and the creation of new values. The journey is not easy, but it is the essence of what it means to be human, to face the void with courage, to wrestle with darkness, and to emerge transformed, having shaped the abyss rather than being shaped by it. In doing so, we honor Nietzsche's call to live authentically, creatively, and boldly, even in the face of life's deepest challenges. Friedrich Nietzsche's concept of the Übermensch, often translated as Overman or Superman, represents one of the most powerful and controversial ideas in his philosophy. Introduced in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, the Übermensch is Nietzsche's vision of an individual who transcends the mediocrity and moral constraints of ordinary society, creating their own values and embracing life's challenges with strength, creativity, and self-determination. This figure is not merely superior in terms of power or intellect. The Übermensch is a new kind of human being who shapes their existence according to their own terms, rejecting imposed norms and carving out a life of authentic purpose. To fully grasp the societal implications of the Übermensch, it's essential to understand the historical context in which Nietzsche wrote. In the late 19th century, Europe was experiencing a crisis of values. Traditional moralities rooted in religion, particularly Christianity, were losing their grip in the wake of scientific advancement and secularization. Nietzsche famously declared that God is dead, symbolizing the collapse of absolute moral and metaphysical foundations. In the absence of divine authority, he believed humanity faced a moral vacuum, a nihilistic void in which life's meaning was questioned, and conventional morality seemed hollow. Nietzsche's response to this crisis was not despair but a call to transcendence. The Übermensch is his answer to nihilism, a figure capable of creating meaning in a world without inherent purpose. Instead of relying on outdated religious doctrines or societal norms, the Übermensch defines their own values, living with an unyielding commitment to personal authenticity and excellence. They are not constrained by slave morality, which Nietzsche associates with passive, reactive virtues such as humility and self-sacrifice. Instead, they embody a master morality grounded in strength, courage, and the relentless pursuit of self-overcoming. On a societal level, the Übermensch challenges us to rethink how we define greatness and purpose. In Nietzsche's view, most people live according to values imposed upon them by external authorities, religion, tradition, or social expectations. The Übermensch rejects this passive acceptance and becomes the creator of their own moral framework. This act of value creation is not merely an intellectual exercise. It is a way of living that transforms every aspect of one's being. by transcending conventional morality. The Übermensch embodies a life of creativity, ambition, and self-actualization. While Nietzsche's vision of the Übermensch is inspiring, it is not without its challenges and critiques. Some critics argue that the concept can be interpreted as a justification for elitism, egoism, or even tyranny. They point to the potential for abuse when individuals or leaders assert their values without regard for others, claiming the mantle of the Übermensch to justify oppressive behavior. Indeed, aspects of Nietzsche's philosophy have been misappropriated in the past, most notably by the Nazis, who distorted his ideas to fit their agenda of racial superiority and dominance. It is crucial to separate these distortions from Nietzsche's actual intentions. The Übermensch is not a call for domination over others, but a call for self-transcendence and personal greatness. The challenges of embodying the Übermensch ideal are also significant. Creating one's own values requires immense courage, self-awareness, and a willingness to confront the unknown. It is not a path for the faint-hearted. It demands a constant process of self-reflection, growth, and self-overcoming. The Übermensch must confront their own weaknesses, fears, and limitations, transforming them into sources of strength. This process can be isolating, as it often involves rejecting societal norms and facing criticism or misunderstanding from others. For Nietzsche, the Übermensch walks a lonely path, but it is a path of profound freedom and fulfillment. Modern aspirations and leadership offer fertile ground for exploring the relevance of the Übermensch. In a world characterized by rapid change, uncertainty, and moral ambiguity, Nietzsche's call to self-creation and authenticity resonates deeply. Leaders who embody the spirit of the Übermensch are not content with following established norms or seeking validation from external authorities. Instead, they chart their own course, driven by a vision that transcends conventional boundaries. Consider, for example, social entrepreneurs who challenge traditional business models by prioritizing social impact and innovation over profit. These leaders often face resistance from established institutions and norms, but persist in creating new frameworks that reflect their values. By rejecting the status quo and embracing a higher purpose, they exemplify the transformative potential of the Übermensch ideal. Similarly, cultural figures who break free from societal expectations and create art that challenges norms and inspires others can be seen as modern embodiments of Nietzsche's vision. At the same time, the Übermensch ideal presents ethical challenges for contemporary leaders. How can one balance the pursuit of self-created values with the needs and rights of others? How do we ensure that the drive for personal greatness does not devolve into egoism or the exploitation of others? Nietzsche's emphasis on self-overcoming offers some guidance. The true Übermensch does not impose their will on others out of a desire for domination. Rather, they seek to transcend their own limitations and embody a higher form of life. This requires humility, empathy, and a recognition of the interconnectedness of all human beings. Personal ambition and collective responsibility need not be mutually exclusive. The Übermensch can inspire leaders to strive for excellence while remaining mindful of their impact on others. This balance is particularly relevant in today's globalized world, where the actions of individuals can have far-reaching consequences. Authentic leadership, informed by Nietzsche's philosophy, involves a commitment to ethical self-creation, pursuing one's values while contributing to the betterment of society. The Übermensch is not a static ideal but a dynamic process of becoming. Nietzsche challenges each of us to rise above mediocrity, to confront our fears and limitations, and to create a life of meaning and purpose. This journey is deeply personal, but also profoundly human. It calls us to engage with the complexities of existence, to embrace both the triumphs and struggles of life, and to shape our destiny with courage and creativity. In doing so, we honor Nietzsche's vision of the Übermensch and become the creators of our own values and the architects of our own lives. When Nietzsche spoke of human struggle, morality, and self-overcoming, he often leaned on metaphors and storytelling to illustrate complex philosophical concepts. This approach allowed him to convey deep truths about the human condition in a way that resonates beyond abstract theory. Among his many examples, the tale of the fox and the grapes is emblematic. demonstrating the concept of ressentiment and the self-deception that often accompanies unfulfilled desires. In this fable, a fox notices ripe, juicy grapes hanging high on a vine, driven by hunger and desire. It makes several attempts to reach them, leaping with all its strength. Each effort fails, and as the fox's exhaustion grows, so too does its realization that the grapes are beyond its grasp. Rather than admit defeat and confront its limitations, the fox walks away, muttering that the grapes were probably sour anyway. This act of self-consolation and rationalization exemplifies how individuals, when faced with failure, can transform their unfulfilled desire into disdain, masking their weakness through contempt. Nietzsche used stories like this to illustrate his idea of slave morality, where individuals rationalize their impotence by redefining their desires and values. In the case of the fox, what was once deeply coveted becomes something despised when it proves unattainable. This mirrors how people sometimes transform their envy of the powerful or successful into a moral critique of power itself, labeling ambition or strength as evil because they cannot attain it. Nietzsche urges us to recognize these dynamics within ourselves, to confront our weaknesses honestly, without succumbing to the corrosive effects of ressentiment. Beyond allegories, Nietzsche's philosophy finds life in countless real-world examples. Consider the story of Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, whose experience in Nazi concentration camps provided a profound illustration of Nietzsche's call to create meaning in the face of suffering. Stripped of all external freedoms, Frankl realized that his inner response to suffering was the one freedom that could never be taken from him. He chose to find purpose in his suffering, helping others endure the unimaginable and maintaining a sense of hope even in the face of despair. Frankl's resilience echoes Nietzsche's belief that individuals can confront the abyss of suffering and emerge stronger, shaping their own values and finding purpose in adversity. Another powerful illustration of Nietzsche's philosophy is found in the life of Nelson Mandela. Imprisoned for 27 years under South Africa's apartheid regime, Mandela had every reason to succumb to hatred, resentment, and bitterness. Instead, he transformed his time in prison into a journey of self-mastery and moral growth. By confronting the abyss of systemic injustice and personal suffering, Mandela emerged not as a broken man, but as a symbol of strength, reconciliation, and justice. He refused to let resentment consume him. Instead, he became a living embodiment of Nietzsche's idea of the Übermensch, someone who transcends conventional morality and creates a new path based on personal strength, forgiveness, and a commitment to higher values. Reflecting on these examples, it's clear that Nietzsche's philosophy is not merely theoretical but deeply practical. His ideas challenge us to confront life's darkness without being consumed by it, to reject complacency, and to create our own meaning even when faced with overwhelming odds. For many, this process involves confronting deeply held beliefs, societal norms, and personal limitations. It is a process fraught with pain and uncertainty, but also with the potential for profound growth and transformation. On a personal level, I recall facing my own abyss during a period of career failure and self-doubt. After years of hard work, a project I believed in deeply fell apart, leaving me questioning my competence and purpose. The temptation to retreat, to blame others, or to rationalize the failure as insignificant was strong. In Nietzschean terms, I was the fox standing before the unreachable grapes. But rather than succumb to resentment or self-deception, I chose to confront my limitations honestly, learn from my mistakes, and use the experience to grow. The journey was painful, but it led to a renewed sense of purpose and a deeper understanding of resilience. In today's world, Nietzsche's philosophy is particularly relevant. We live in an era of rapid change, social upheaval, and moral conflict. The temptation to retreat into binary moralities, seeing the world in terms of absolute good and evil, us versus them, is strong. Nietzsche's challenge is to move beyond these simplistic frameworks, to engage with the complexities of life and create our own values based on strength, creativity, and authenticity. Take, for example, The rise of social movements that seek to challenge systemic injustices. While these movements often begin with noble intentions, they can sometimes fall into the trap of ressentiment, defining themselves primarily in opposition to their perceived oppressors. Nietzsche's philosophy invites activists and leaders to go further, to not only challenge the existing order, but to create new values and visions of justice that transcend the old binaries. This requires courage, creativity, and a willingness to confront the darkness within themselves and their movements. The story of Malala Yousafzai offers another poignant example. Shot by the Taliban for advocating for girls' education, Malala faced a literal and metaphorical abyss. She could have chosen to retreat, to be consumed by fear and resentment. Instead, she used her experience to become a global advocate for education and human rights. In doing so, she exemplifies Nietzsche's call to create meaning in the face of adversity, to transform personal suffering into a force for good. Nietzsche's philosophy also speaks to the everyday struggles we all face, whether it's the loss of a loved one, the end of a relationship, or a crisis of purpose. The abyss can take many forms, but the challenge remains the same: to confront it without losing ourselves, to find strength in the face of darkness, and to emerge transformed. This is not an easy path. It requires self-awareness, resilience, and the courage to create our own values in a world that often seeks to impose its own. Ultimately, the lessons of Nietzsche's stories and philosophy remind us that life's struggles are not obstacles to be avoided but opportunities for growth. By facing our own abysses, whether personal, societal, or existential, we have the chance to transcend the limits of conventional morality and become the creators of our own destiny. In doing so, we honor the spirit of Nietzsche's thought and embrace the fullness of what it means to be human. Nietzsche's philosophy, often seen as radical and unsettling, carries profound insights for understanding contemporary issues like mental health, social norms, and leadership. His call to challenge traditional values and create one's own meaning offers both a powerful critique of societal pressures and a framework for personal empowerment in today's complex world. At its core, Nietzsche's philosophy centers on self-overcoming, the idea that individuals must confront and transform their own struggles, values, and limitations to live authentically. Applied to modern life, this philosophy can offer valuable perspectives for navigating some of today's most pressing challenges. In the realm of mental health, Nietzsche's ideas provide a counterpoint to the stigma and shame that often accompany mental struggles. His concept of amor fati, or the love of one's fate, encourages individuals to embrace their challenges and find meaning within their suffering, rather than viewing it as something to be hidden or defeated. In a world where the pursuit of perfection and happiness is often idealized, Nietzsche's philosophy reminds us that suffering is an integral part of the human experience. It is through confronting and integrating these darker moments that we grow stronger and more resilient. Consider how society tends to pathologize certain emotions or states of mind, labeling anxiety, sadness, or existential dread as conditions to be eradicated. Nietzsche would challenge this perspective, urging us to view these feelings as opportunities for self-reflection and transformation. This is not to minimize the very real suffering that accompanies mental health challenges, but to encourage a shift in perspective. Struggles with anxiety, for example, often arise from uncertainty and fear of the future. Nietzsche would advise us to confront these fears head-on, to understand their roots, and to transform our relationship with uncertainty through self-awareness and courageous action. On a personal level, I have found this approach both challenging and liberating. There have been times when fear of failure or self-doubt threatened to paralyze me. In these moments, it was tempting to retreat or to seek quick fixes to avoid discomfort. But by embracing the discomfort and examining its source, I was able to gain a deeper understanding of my own motivations and fears. This process, though painful, led to a renewed sense of purpose and resilience, a reflection of Nietzsche's belief in self-overcoming as the path to true growth. Nietzsche's critique of social norms also resonates deeply in the context of contemporary culture. Today's society is often shaped by external expectations, whether it's the pressure to conform to specific beauty standards, achieve certain career milestones, or adhere to prevailing political ideologies. Social media amplifies these pressures, creating echo chambers where dissenting voices are often silenced or shamed. Nietzsche would see this as a manifestation of herd mentality, where individuals lose themselves in collective values rather than forging their own paths. To live authentically in such a climate requires what Nietzsche called becoming who you are. This involves rejecting the passive acceptance of societal norms and instead engaging in a process of self-creation. It means questioning the values imposed upon us, discerning which ones align with our true selves, and courageously living according to our own principles. This is not an easy task. It requires confronting the fear of rejection, the discomfort of standing alone, and the uncertainty of charting a new course. But it is the essence of living authentically, a path that leads to deeper fulfillment and a stronger sense of self. In the context of leadership, Nietzsche's ideas offer a powerful critique of traditional models based on authority, hierarchy, and conformity. True leadership, from a Nietzschean perspective, is not about asserting dominance or enforcing rigid rules. It is about inspiring others to rise above mediocrity, to question existing norms, and to pursue greatness. The leader who embodies the spirit of the Übermensch does not seek to impose their will on others, but to empower them to create their own values and strive for self-overcoming. This kind of leadership is transformative, rooted in authenticity, creativity, and a commitment to higher principles. Take, for example, leaders in the business world who prioritize innovation and social impact over profit at all costs. By challenging the status quo and creating new frameworks that reflect their values, these leaders inspire others to think differently and act boldly. In doing so, they embody the Nietzschean ideal of self-creation, transforming not only their own organizations, but also the broader cultural landscape. This approach stands in stark contrast to leaders who cling to traditional norms out of fear or complacency. Nietzsche's philosophy reminds us that true greatness comes not from maintaining the status quo but from challenging it. However, Nietzsche's call to create one's own values raises important ethical questions. How do we balance the pursuit of personal authenticity with the needs and rights of others? How do we ensure that self-overcoming does not devolve into egoism or the imposition of one's will on others? Nietzsche's emphasis on self-awareness and the constant process of self-overcoming offers some guidance. The goal is not to dominate or exploit others, but to transcend one's own limitations and embody a higher form of life rooted in strength, integrity, and compassion. For individuals navigating today's complex world, Nietzsche's philosophy can be a source of empowerment by encouraging us to confront our fears, question societal norms, and create our own values. He offers a path to authenticity and self-mastery. This path is not without its challenges. It requires courage, resilience, and a willingness to embrace the discomfort of self-examination. But it also holds the potential for profound growth and fulfillment. Ultimately, Nietzsche's ideas challenge us to engage deeply with life's complexities, to confront our own darkness, and to create meaning in a world that often seems chaotic and uncertain. In doing so, we become not passive recipients of imposed values, but active creators of our own destinies, individuals who live authentically, led with integrity, and transform the world around us. This is the essence of Nietzsche's call to self-overcoming, a call that remains as relevant today as it was in his own time. As we reflect on Nietzsche's philosophy, it becomes clear that his ideas hold a timeless and urgent relevance for our lives. He challenged us to go beyond conventional morality, to confront the darkness within and around us, and to create meaning in a world often devoid of inherent purpose. His vision of self-overcoming, rooted in authenticity and courage, remains a powerful call to transcend mediocrity and to become the authors of our own values. Central to Nietzsche's philosophy is the rejection of externally imposed norms and the embrace of self-created values. He saw traditional morality, rooted in religious dogma, societal expectations, and conformity, as a force that stifled human potential. To live authentically, Nietzsche believed, we must question the values handed down to us and forge our own path. This act of value creation is not a rejection of all morality, but a commitment to living according to principles that reflect our true selves. It is a path that demands courage, self-awareness, and the willingness to face uncertainty. The idea of facing the abyss, of confronting life's darkest challenges and moments of despair, is a recurring theme in Nietzsche's work. He warned that staring too long into the abyss can transform us, that in battling darkness, we risk becoming it ourselves. This is not a call to retreat from life's challenges, but a reminder to engage with them thoughtfully and with integrity. When we face the abyss, whether it be personal trauma, societal injustice, or existential doubt, we must do so with the understanding that it can change us. The challenge is to emerge from the confrontation not as broken or bitter, but as stronger, more resilient versions of ourselves. Nietzsche's concept of the Übermensch, or Overman, embodies this transformative process. The Übermensch is not a distant ideal but a model for each of us to strive toward. A reminder that we have the power to transcend our limitations, to rise above herd mentality, and to create lives of purpose and greatness. This journey is deeply personal, and it requires us to confront our fears, our weaknesses, and the values that no longer serve us. But it also holds the promise of liberation, the freedom to live authentically and to shape our destiny on our own terms. In a world filled with noise, distraction, and pressure to conform, Nietzsche's call to authenticity and self-overcoming is more important than ever. We are bombarded with messages about who we should be, what we should value, and how we should live. Social norms, cultural expectations, and the relentless demands of modern life can leave us feeling lost and disconnected from our true selves. Nietzsche challenges us to break free from these constraints and to listen to our own inner voice. This is not a license for selfishness or moral relativism. It is an invitation to live with integrity, to pursue our deepest passions, and to create values that reflect our unique experiences. For those grappling with self-doubt, fear, or the weight of societal expectations, Nietzsche offers a path forward. He reminds us that we are not defined by our circumstances, but by how we respond to them. Every challenge, every setback, every confrontation with darkness is an opportunity for growth. By facing our own abysses with courage and self-determination, we can transform suffering into strength, fear into wisdom, and despair into hope. This journey is not without its challenges. It requires us to be brutally honest with ourselves, to confront our own flaws and limitations, and to take responsibility for our actions and choices. It demands resilience in the face of failure and the willingness to learn from our mistakes. But it also offers the possibility of profound transformation, the chance to become the person we are meant to be, to live with purpose and authenticity, and to leave a meaningful mark on the world. As you reflect on Nietzsche's philosophy, consider how it applies to your own life. What values have you accepted without question? What fears or doubts have held you back from living authentically? What challenges have you faced? And how have they shaped you? The path to self-overcoming is not easy, but it is the path to true freedom and fulfillment. Nietzsche's words are a call to action, a challenge to face our own abysses, to question the values imposed upon us, and to create lives of purpose and greatness. It is a call to reject complacency, to embrace courage, and to become the authors of our own stories. In a world that often seeks to define us, let us rise above the noise and create our own values, our own meaning, and our own destiny. This is the essence of living authentically, the path to self-overcoming, and the heart of Nietzsche's timeless philosophy. As we come to the end of this journey through Nietzsche's philosophy, we're left with one inescapable truth: life's greatest challenges, its deepest abysses, are not to be avoided but confronted. Nietzsche's words urge us to grapple with the darkness within and around us, to stare into the abyss and allow it to test, shape, and ultimately transform who we are. But his warning remains: when we confront darkness, we must be careful not to become it. Consider for a moment what it means to engage with life's challenges authentically and courageously. It's tempting to retreat, to bury our struggles beneath layers of distraction or denial. Yet, as we've explored, it's in these very moments of confrontation that we can redefine ourselves. The abyss doesn't have to consume us. It can become a crucible from which we emerge stronger and more resilient. This isn't just philosophy. It's a call to action for each of us. What are the abysses you face? Are they struggles with self-doubt, trauma, or the weight of societal expectations? Whatever they may be, know that you have the strength to stare into them, and more importantly, the strength to decide what you take away from the encounter. Will you let it reshape you into something unrecognizable? Or will you use it to forge a path of self-mastery and meaning? Remember, Nietzsche's idea of self-overcoming is about more than survival. It's about breaking free from imposed values, challenging the limits of who we believe we are, and creating something new, a life of purpose and authenticity that reflects our true selves. It's a journey that requires courage, self-reflection, and resilience, but it's a journey worth taking. So, as you go forth, carry this with you. The abyss is not an end but a beginning. It is where we find the depth of our character and the strength to create our own values. Embrace the challenge, rise to meet it, and transform the darkness into a source of power and wisdom. By doing so, you honor Nietzsche's call to live authentically, to create boldly, and to shape your destiny with intention and integrity. If you enjoyed this exploration into Nietzsche's powerful philosophy, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to see more content that dives deep into philosophy, life, and self-transformation, be sure to like this video, share it with friends who might find it meaningful, and subscribe to the channel *** for more thought-provoking discussions. Thank you for joining me, and remember, the journey doesn't end here. It begins wherever you decide to confront the darkness and make it your own. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep creating your own path.